Welcome to another edition of Digital Dialogues by Maritime Gateway. Today we have a guest with us, Mr. Ted Mutaya. Since November 2018, he has been the Chief Commercial Officer at SAGT. Previously, he served in the capacity with SAGT from August 2014 to August 2017, thereafter taking up the position of CEO with the Philippine company ICTSI based in Papua New Guinea. Ted is a 35 plus years veteran of the shipping industry as a senior executive with leading shipping lines, and he has lived and worked in 7 countries with responsibilities spanning Oceania, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Africa. Ted holds an MBA, major in strategic management from the Swinburne Graduate School of Entrepreneurship. He is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, Australia, a fellow of the Australian Institute of Management, and a member of the Australian Human Resource Institute. He is also a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certified practitioner. He presently serves as a mentor for students in the Transport and Logistics Management course at the University of Moratuwa. A product of Royal College of Colombo, he captained the school at rugby in 1982 and represented Sri Lanka at the Rugby Asia tournament in Japan in 1984. That is supported by his wife Sonali and daughter Anik in Melbourne, Australia. Welcome to the show, Ted. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Ravi. Great pleasure to be on your program once again.
That's a very impressive profile that you have here. Apart from the shipping and logistics experience, you are into a lot of things like rugby. Still you play?
Not playing anymore, Ravi, but certainly involved in the administration of the game at club level and at the national level.
Okay. So let us focus now on the game of business, which is on table right now.
Yes.
So Ted, let me begin by asking you. We have seen recently, maybe a couple of months back, there is a lot of issues at Colombo, low productivity at terminals and causing significant delays and backlogs in clearances. So I want to begin this conversation understanding how is the situation now at Colombo terminals.
The Port of Colombo consists of 3 terminals, Ravi. CICT, the latest and the only deep draft facility in South Asia. SAGT is the first private terminal that established in 1999. And of course, Jaya Container Terminal, JCT, which is a government operated terminal. All 3 terminals, yes, like many in the region and globally, did at the outset of the pandemic have some disruptions, but I'm pleased to say that the 3 terminals working in close operational collaboration have now normalized the port operations in Colombo and for quite some weeks now.
That things have improved and doing better. But tell me, there was also a disruption from the lines and some service cancellations, and also it has affected the vessel schedules and also the planning at the terminal. So how much of it affected the terminal and how much it has impacted the cargo volumes?
So overall, at year to date, the Port of Colombo is about 12% down. That's at end of 2020 versus the previous year, 2019. But obviously, if you look at the last 6 months, perhaps in the second half of the year, which is traditionally also a higher uptick of volumes, when you compare the full year, the second half of the year is about 60% of the full year. We certainly have been much more impacted in terms of the volumes. You mentioned about void sailings. There's a whole plethora of factors, Ravi. It wasn't one, whether it was one terminal or the port or one shipping line or whatever it can be. And I'm sure we will get into a lot of these details in the course of the discussion. But things such as the long dwell of containers in the port, simply because importers could not clear it. Customs were operating on limited hours, shipping lines were on limited hours, people had not had the contingencies in place to handle the bills of lading. Banks were operating limited hours, truck drivers could not come because they were typically in lockdown areas. So there's a whole plethora of things. And I think, to be fair, the whole industry across the globe responded much more swiftly than many people anticipated. And I think just looking back to when Indian ports went into lockdown, it really, I mean, as you know, India is the elephant in the room for the region and for most part of global trade. That certainly sent a lot of shockwaves through the system. But it seems almost like a distant past now, because today we are operating quite almost back to normal. And it's a new normal, mind you.
And then what is your future outlook?
Yes, excellent question, Ravi. And insofar as when we speak to our shipping customers, the shipping lines, many of them themselves don't seem to have a handle on what might be the future. We are beginning to see a new supply chain, if you like, in terms of sourcing. We talked of near sourcing, and I talked about this even on my last time when I was on the program, where importers are looking for near sourcing and their traditional sourcing. So you might have sourcing from China and then somewhere midway point. So we're beginning to see some of this. We are seeing a lot more cargo or trade between ASEAN bloc of nations and South Asia, namely India, and to some extent Bangladesh. So these are some of the evolving changes that we have seen. The fact I mentioned, I touched on in the container dwell time in the ports, purely because importers couldn't take delivery and so on and so forth. Just for SAGT, we had in 2019, the average dwell time of transshipment containers was less than 3 days. In the course of the last quarter of 2020, we were averaging about 14 days. So this has a severe impact on the yard density, the flexibility of the yard, and these in turn will have impact on the vessel productivity on the quay side. So these are some elements that nobody could have even predicted, going from 3 days average to 14 days. So that was a swift move that happened just overnight. So it wasn't sort of progressively 4, 5, 6, 7 days. It just went. And of course, then in the meantime, cargo was still coming in because the port of Colombo remained operational right throughout. There was not a stage that we actually closed the door and said we cannot handle ships. We did have some disruptions for sure, but at no stage did we say we are not handling ships. So at times we couldn't handle as many ships as we have done in the past, but certainly the recovery process and the engagement, I think, was something quite creditable, that right through every step of the way, under the leadership of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority chairman, who has a military background, he's retired, but I think that brought some military precision in terms of the bringing parties together to a common goal. I think he did that exceptionally well, getting the stakeholders, the transport companies, the shipping companies, the customs, and all of those stakeholders together. So today, I'm pleased to say that the Port of Colombo is operating back to normal. The ITT, which is the interterminal trucking, is back to normal. Ultimately, these are a combination of factors. If there is a tip of the balance and you have more containers discharged in one terminal more so than you would normally have, then it changes the pattern of that ITT truck movement. We try to avoid a single truck movement. If we want to get a truck going from, say, SAGT to CICT, which in turn then brings about back to SAGT. So those are things that we have identified where we could improve, and we continue to do that.
Ted, some of the challenges that you have mentioned, which has impacted the business at Colombo, are due to pandemic, and then as we all happily admit that this is a temporary phenomenon, that things would spring back to normal. But the other challenge I would like to bring forward is you are a transshipment hub at a very strategic location. But we have been hearing talks about Indian government promoting transshipment hubs on Indian coast. One is already there, and then a couple of more they have been thinking. Of course, there is an intent. I don't know how much of walk the talk government would do and how much of them would get materialized, but the intent is there. So are you worried about these developments, and What else Colombo is doing to retain its position as a transshipment hub?
The Port of Colombo, Ravi, as we all know for quite some time now, is in a very strategic geographic position. That alone, no more, is a competitive advantage. For our customers, they're looking for end-to-end when the ship comes to the port till it gets out of the port, the optimum operating time, which means that a ship that's sailing between ports is actually earning money rather than sitting in the port. So we recognize that. Now, in the South Asia region, CICT in the Port of Colombo is the only deep draft facility. So the three terminals in the Port of Colombo are complementary to each other because each has its own unique value proposition. Now, when we talk about competition, we actually regard competition as in to our west is Jebel Ali, and to our east is Singapore, and Tanjung Pelepas to some extent in Malaysia. So these are the ports, but the other hub ports on competition. We see the Port of Colombo actually as an extension, if you like, complementary to India's import-export community. Right? If you really think about, as you quite rightly mentioned, 70 to 80% of our throughput is transshipment, of which India alone represents about 75, 80% also. We want India as partners with us, as we also need to position ourselves. And I think there's some work to be done to win the confidence of Indian importers and exporters, because the media rhetoric sometimes does the industry an injustice. Because certainly we are working very closely. As you know, we have done many visits to India, promoting what we do in the Port of Colombo, doing road shows, presenting the value proposition of how Sri Lanka or Port of Colombo can be complementary. Now, this is not to say that you don't need to have direct services going to the Indian ports. This is in addition to those, right? You can have a fast ship, a slow ship, and on many occasions, the transshipment vessel arrives at destination faster than the direct vessel. You know, so I think it's having options available to the end customer. And in that regard, I think Port of Colombo continues to have some value proposition, in fact, an important value proposition to the South Asia partners, India, Pakistan, even Bangladesh. And it makes sense that you will relay cargo of Port of Colombo if you're going towards Europe or to the east coast of USA. There would be some discussion or debate saying that it might be faster to go from, say, Bay of Bengal over Singapore, Malaysia, if you want to go to west coast of USA. Yes and no, it all depends on where the shipping lines have their networks also. So what we are doing is focusing on that key deliverable, which is turning that vessel around, not just on the quay side, but from the time she gets into Port of Colombo waters till she departs. And that includes the tugs, the pilots, and all of those other ancillary services that are very integral to the terminal performance also.
Apart from India being a major partner in business, even Bangladesh is also another important partner for you. So what is the update from Bangladesh?
I think Bangladesh has not surprised too many people in terms of their growth. We have always known that Bangladesh, they've had some challenges in terms of the infrastructure, ships getting in and out. There's some development in regards to the river mouth terminal that's getting underway. So certainly Sri Lanka again will position itself as the gateway to South Asia. That's not to say that the others are not important. I think we are complementary, but we are so much closer to the east-west main trade routes. So our position to Bangladesh, particularly with all that garment cargo that comes in. Now we know that at various times and over the various years, you might have some congestion in Chittagong. You might have some challenges in Colombo. You'll have some challenges in Nhava Sheva and so on and so forth. These are not unusual, but it is how quickly each of those facilities can respond swiftly to the challenges hand. And I think the whole region has done a remarkable job where after the initial onslaught and the second wave, that we are at each turn improving in the way we actually respond to these challenges and keep the business moving reasonably seamlessly.
I see from the media reports that your shipping minister and Sri Lankan Ports Authority chairman talk a lot about bringing a lot of focus on port development in Colombo. what actually is the intent of the government in terms of developing or improving Colombo as a hub?
So quite often people look at the hub concept as simply moving containers around. But I think when you talk about a maritime hub, you're talking a lot much more than just the container movement. So as I mentioned, we are in a good strategic location. I would like to see us develop an international flow center where we can bring partially completed goods and finish them off in Sri Lanka or in Port of Colombo within the customs controlled area and then reship them out. So this is reshipping of transit for re-export. We would like to see a greater capability of equipment repair and ship maintenance, so that you can do this. You don't have to go into dry dock. We have those capabilities around. Maritime arbitration, right? Now, Singapore has done a wonderful job in that regard, is to get maritime arbitration. All of these factors, I think, contribute to positioning a location as being effective maritime hub. So we're not just a transshipment hub. I would like, and I think that's what's been the political rhetoric also, is that we want to position ourselves as a maritime hub. The minister's vision that he sets out is the aspirations of where we want to be. It will now take private enterprise and investment and appetite, working in collaboration with the public sector to motivate and to mobilize the vision to reality. And that for this part of the world can be quite challenging at the best of times. It takes time. But I think all parties, all stakeholders are of one voice that whether it be ECT, we're already 4 years too late. And there's so much other stuff that can be done. But I think equally, we can't all point the finger at government and say, what are you doing about it? Government's job is to facilitate, to put the regulations in place that will be conducive for private enterprise to come in and invest. So I think the government's doing that now. And unfortunately, Sri Lanka, as you know, over the last few years, we'd have a number of political upheavals, change of government, change of policies, and so on. So I think now we are beginning to see some traction. The potential to be a world-class regional maritime hub has never been in doubt. The execution requires a collective mindset to put the interests of the greater good first. That's how I would summarize it, Ravi.
Since you mentioned about ECT, I would like to bring up that subject. Of course, there is a lot of geopolitical scenario and nationalism around that terminal right now. But leaving that aside, as a port operator, what is your perspective? How important is ECT, and what is the advantage for the trade or even for the country?
The industry desperately needs the potential 3 million TEU capacity that ECT will bring to the Port of Colombo. As I said, it's already 4 years too late, maybe more. The model for ECT, as I understand it, is the same as it was for SAGT and CICT. Build, operate, and transfer over a duration of period of time, maybe 30, 35 years. The ownership of the land will remain sovereign to Sri Lanka at all times. So quite honestly, from where I sit, it's a no-brainer. So there's a lot of emotion around nationalism and sovereignty and all of that. But really, it's no different to some of the other very impactful investments that the maritime sector has experienced, both with SAGT and with CICT. So from a cargo standpoint, as we already mentioned, India plays a big role, South Asia for that matter. And these will continue to grow, not just organically. As I mentioned, there's a lot of trade now between ASEAN bloc nations and South Asia. We will see this continue to grow. And I think, I think you touched on this, having an Indian entity involved in ECT, I think would be fantastic, right? Given the presence of Indian cargo through the port, the throughput, right? I think it'll give a lot more confidence to Indian importers and exporters to know that there is a flag planted at ECT or wherever in the Port of Colombo, where they contribute so much throughput. And we welcome that. As a terminal operator in the Port of Colombo, I'm saying we would welcome somebody from India to put that stake out there, because I think we need to have the customer in mind always. And the customer is immediately to a terminal is a shipping line, but we also have the mind of the customer's customer, which is the import-export, what we call the BCO, beneficial cargo owner.
We talked a lot about trade scenario. Let's talk about SAGT. You have, I think, just completed about 2 decades of maritime excellence. In fact, 21 years of existence in this trade. So, what are the key milestones that SAGT has passed, and what is the future vision that you have for the terminal?
SAGT, as I mentioned earlier, we kicked off in 1999. It was the first private-public partnership infrastructure project launched at that time. Quite a watershed moment. Much of today's baseline operational performance benchmarks in the Port of Colombo were established through the early successes of SAGT bringing global best practice to the port. We have 4 shareholders. Jonki is the local company, APM Terminals, a global terminal operator, Evergreen, a global shipping line, and the port of the SLPA, Sri Lanka Ports Authority. So you can see it's a very mixed bag, but all playing a definitive role in that. In success, now when it was established, the design capacity was only for 1.1 million TEU, Ravi. Right? In the successive years of 2018 and 19, SAGT achieved a throughput in excess of 2 million TEUs. A terminal original design to deliver 1.1, consistently delivering in excess of 2 million is quite a remarkable outcome. Now, this has been possible through strategic operational planning, performance monitoring, and execution. So looking at the details right through. All of it with a clear focus on safety and customer centricity. We have been paying attention to what the customer wants, and we often strive for it. We always strive for it, but quite often we may fail. But the engagement with the customer leaves them with good confidence that we are always working towards that aspiration of delivering better and better each time. Much credit to the SAGT team, past, present, and those in the pipeline. But I think it's important to recognize other stakeholders, such as the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, who actually are responsible for all the ancillary services, the tugs, the pilots, the harbor dues, light dues, all of those are handled by the Ports Authority. So, of course, our customers, whose vessel planners make it possible for optimum crane deployment. So if you have a ship that's loaded and discharged all of the shop on the ship, we cannot achieve some of those performance benchmarks that we have established. Not too long ago, SAGT was recognized by JOC Journal of Commerce as being the most productive terminal in South Asia and number 4 in the world. That's some time ago. We can't rest on our laurels because other ports have come along and now got ahead of us. And there's a lot of work we need to do. But I think 2 million is probably around the mark of what best fits us. Some might argue that 1.8 is more comfortable. But I think coming from 1.1 to 2 million was, even for ourselves, many of us in the organization, a change in mindset where we sort of broke through that barrier that we can get to 2 million. Now, sustaining it successfully in terms of delivering the productivity metrics that customers look for, because 2 million on a 3-day average dwell time is very different to 2 million trying to deliver on 14 days average. We just don't have the yard space to maneuver. So I think we have to approach a different mindset, whether we change the yard configuration, types of ships. All of these things are evolving, but our focus remains on achieving the quickest turn time for vessels. And I think that's all the customer expects from us also. Now, you talked about the future. It is exciting, just as it is also unpredictable. Cargo flows, we are still trying to work out what's going to happen with the trade spat between China and USA. China is not going to fold its arm and say, woe is me, US doesn't want to buy from me. I think they will aggressively look at alternate markets. And certainly when you look at the ASEAN and the South Asia region, that's where you have the bigger or blooming middle income earners who are going to be driving those economies. So I think there's a lot of potential for that. Incremental efficiencies will come in the form of digitization and digitalization. Information sharing in real time, transparency, and seamless end-to-end serviceability. These are the aspects that our customers are demanding of us. So simply moving that container fast is not only enough. They want the information of when that box was loaded. So in turn, their customers, the end users, also have the transparency and in the secure environment. So all in all, I think that's exciting. These are the areas of future value add that will evolve in meeting the customer's expectations. So it's not only about hard assets, but a lot of the other soft ease of doing business aspects also.
You mentioned about digitalization. During the pandemic, when I was talking to a lot of companies, either terminals or service providers. So one thing came out quite common is due to this pandemic, the digitalization process has been accelerated. In fact, everyone is now looking at transforming into a digital organization. So when you say digitalization, where exactly you are using these digitalization, at what stage you are? And also, it is not that you as alone, I mean, the whole digital environment, the ecosystem has to be there. So in Sri Lanka, either other service providers or business partners, so exactly what's happening in this digital space?
So, of course, just for the sake of the audience, I think there's a big difference between digitization and digitalization. Digitization, of course, is just converting to electronic form the hard copy. And digitalization is the continuation of end-to-end encrypted messaging. SAGD was pleased or is pleased to be the first adopter of TradeLens in the Port of Colombo as a means to support our customers' promise to their customers for seamless real-time shipment information at a cost-efficient, secure, and sustainable platform. TradeLens, of course, is based on blockchain technology. I'm not a technical expert, Ravi, but essentially meaning integration of end-to-end, individually digitized information records that are secure, transparent, and unchangeable. So unchangeable, the proper terminology I'm told is immutable, meaning you cannot vary it. Now, it is best suited to groups of diverse yet related stakeholders in a broad network. So you quite rightly said that it's not one or two. It's about a broad network and not only in the country specific. So you call it ecosystem, which means all parties playing in a particular environment that have relation to each other, either directly or indirectly. In the context of a shipper and consignee, the information from purchase order through to delivery receipt is on a single supply chain platform. It allows for seamless, incorruptible information sharing under secure access. So when SAGD came on board at that time, for us, it was about participating as part of this bigger ecosystem. We were the first in the Port of Colombo, and hopefully that will also be a conduit to other stakeholders, whether it be Sri Lankan Customs, Sri Lanka Ports Authority, the other terminals, and some of the bigger importer-exporter houses to also come on board. So I think when you look at, I'm not a spokesperson for TradeLens necessarily, because you also have a competing ecosystem called Global Shipping Business Network also, which I think was built on the back of Cargo Smart. So you'll have a couple of ecosystems, but recently I know that ONE, Hapag-Lloyd have also joined TradeLens, which means that there's the top 4 or the top 5 shipping lines now on TradeLens. So I think as it will only get better, but we are still at the embryonic stage of getting more people, more stakeholders onto the platform, and more people who come on board, the more relevant and more impactful it will be. But certainly I think the uptake in places like Europe and USA is much more rapid than in, say, South Asia, because we still are stuck, particularly on customs and government related agencies, are still stuck in the traditional computerization and still not able to transfer. But I think it's around the corner, and the benefit of that will only be determined by how many more people come on board. But for us, we are certainly happy to be part of it.
Thank you very much for joining us today and sharing a lot of insights into the trade scenario at Colombo, the cargo handling situation, and the Colombo's political intention to transform Colombo into a maritime hub rather than a transshipment hub, and of course SAGD journey into the most efficient terminal in Colombo, in the South Asia region, in fact. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Ravi, and God bless you and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.